What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Third and Longhorn. We have a very special guest today. We've been working on getting this man on the show for quite a while. He's a very important man, so he's running around doing a lot of things. But we have Drew Martin, who is the Executive Senior Associate Athletics Director at Texas. Welcome.
Yo, baby.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate being here.
I always want to get the title right, but basically what I understand that translates to, or what everyone around the 40 says, is Drew runs marketing.
Basically that. All things external. I tell people all the time, if it interfaces with the public, it's typically external affairs. So, but It boils down to, we market the program.
Simplified.
Well, that's awesome. You guys do incredible work, but we'll get to that part. But we always start the show off the same way. How did you get to Texas? Can you kind of take us through your journey and how you got here?
Absolutely. I pinch myself every day and waking up, am I really at the University of Texas? So it's pretty awesome. Simple path. I started in athletics at Mississippi State University as a student. My sophomore year, I worked for media relations there and got really, really good experience handling golf programs of all things. And then when I graduated, the Big 12 Conference was in its first year. They had gone through their football season, trying to be a very shoestring staff, trying to turn back as much money to the schools as possible. And I think they realized once they got through football that they really needed some help, and probably some cheap help, almost free help. So they advertised for some interns, and I was fortunate to get one of the internships and loaded up a U-Haul, moved to Dallas, Texas. I'd never been to Texas in my life, and moved to Dallas, worked there for about 6 months, and then, don't shoot me here, guys, but a school down the road called Texas A&M gave me a call and said, would you like to work for a full-time job? And I said, sure, that'd be great. So I started there as media relations under Alan Cannon, who I'm just hearing is retiring coming up pretty soon. So congratulations to him. He's had a hell of a career there. But I got to work at Texas A&M, worked my way up there to assistant athletic director by the time I left. Wow. Took a brief stint outside of athletics. This is the personal side of the story I don't tell very often, but my dad was really sick with cancer and had an opportunity to work with PepsiCo, who had come on board at A&M to be the pouring rights partner there, and work closely with them on that marketing transition into that product. And they offered me a position in Memphis, where I'm from. I got to go home and be with Dad for the last 9 months of his life.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so when he passed away, I always say I'm thankful to Pepsi for two reasons. One is I got to be with my dad for the last 9 months of his life. Mm-hmm. And two, I realized that my passion really is in college athletics. I mean, I the global brand, appreciated, the opportunity to learn from a global brand like that. But it reinforced, I love what I do in college sports. So I had an opportunity through some mutual connections to visit with a guy named Chris Del Conte at TCU, who was joining the Big 12 Conference. Yep. And we kind of hit it off there. And he asked me in the interview, he said, can you start Monday? I said, well, maybe not Monday, but I went to work at TCU fairly shortly after that. That was May of 2012. And then when Chris had the opportunity to come, and as he likes to, you get one chance to ride Bevo. So when he took his chance to ride Bevo, he asked me to come along and ride shotgun with him. So I came down to the 40 acres in 2018 and took over external affairs, and here we are.
I love that part. I love that Del Conte was basically start tomorrow, and anyone who's ever worked with him understands.
1,000%. I believe it was Friday afternoon. It was like, so you start on Monday, right?
How about right now? What are you doing right now?
I got to go. I was actually en route to my best friend. He was getting married in Houston, and so I was driving from Memphis, stopped into Fort Worth, do the interview, and then keep going down to Houston. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of busy right now, but how's a couple weeks from now? Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
Let's start there. Tell us something we don't know about CDC.
Rod goes straight off script.
Just took us through how I got here. I want to stay here. Let me make that clear.
Here's the how I left part of the story.
Right, correct. And then what happened? What happened was I went on this little podcast called Third and Longhorn and spilled the beans. I think one of the things that Chris is so he's incredibly intelligent. I mean, he's a savant when it comes to this industry, and I've never seen anybody that's as talented as a leader and as a fundraiser specifically as he is. I think the one thing that people, one thing that I really admire about him and that people may not always know about him is, I've seen Chris in a lot of different positions where, maybe maybe a kid's, going through a really tough time. Like, I lost my dad, right? And watching Chris with the student athlete, with the coach, with the staff, with the personnel, this is extremely personal to him. And I think that comes out in a lot of ways. When you see him interact with fans on a game day, or you see him interact on social media, it's like, oh, well, he takes this really, really personally. He tells us all the time and reinforces, this is our house. This is like inviting guests into your home. Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium, that is your home. So it needs to be ready. It needs to be clean. It needs to be prepared. It needs to be friendly. It needs to be all these things because this is our home. He takes that all the way to the personal level with staff that I think some of the most brilliant moments that I've seen him over 13 years of working with him is how human he is, with student athletes, particularly with coaches, with staff, whatever they're going through. He always has an ear and a really, really good piece of sound advice. I mean, this is personal for him at every level.
That's awesome.
Well, I think you'll be staying on staff now.
That answer was perfect.
I think that was spot on. I do want to dive into your road to getting to Texas.
Sure.
You mentioned starting in Stark Vegas as a youngster, then going Big 12, inaugural season,
Yep.
A&M, obviously a part of the Big 12,
Sure.
coming back to the Big 12, TCU, Pepsi. Talk about what experiences you've learned from that has helped attribute to the success that you've been able to experience just from your professional side, that you've seen Texas grow from 2018 until now.
For sure. I mean, I think along all of those ways, like I mentioned, I started out as a student assistant and then went to work as an intern at a fledgling conference. Well, a 21, 22-year-old, I didn't really have the gravity behind this new Big 12 conference. It was a merger of the old Big 8 and 4 schools coming from the Southwest Conference to create a new conference.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school in the SEC. It mirrored that. The way that it worked was a lot like how the Southeastern Conference worked: 2 divisions in football, a championship game, the whole 9 yards. So I don't think that I really understood at that time all of the evolution that I was jumping in that stream with, right? And so I think as it comes to today and watching Texas from 2018 to now, some of the easy low pickings are, what did we do to change the football game day atmosphere? What did we do to change all of our sports atmosphere? How did we really, embrace our fan base and bring them along and really elevate this brand? I think that's some of the easy stuff. The harder stuff is today with NIL and with the absolute changing landscape of college athletics that we've seen over the last 7 years. Take COVID notwithstanding, I mean, a global pandemic, the entire world is trying to do it.
Different aspect.
But when I look back over my career, and it's close to 30 years at this point, I don't think that I realized how much it has been a constant evolution the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is just another microcosm of evolution in the industry. And to me, it's pretty exciting. It's really, really exciting to say, hey, we've got a chance now at the University of Texas with the brand that we are to continue to lead the way in college sports. And nobody's done it before. And that's okay. We're going to go out there and we're going to be the pioneer and the frontier leader in this race. But as I look back, that's kind of what's been happening all along with conference, formulation, with shifts, with all the different, the Alston benefit. I mean, all of these things along the way. This is just the next step in the evolution that college athletics has had really over the last 30 years. The last 7, it's certainly accelerated quite a bit. But it's been a constant evolution my entire career, and I'm not sure that I realized that at the beginning of it. It just was what it was, and so you go with it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that moving forward with these young people that are graduating with their sport management degrees, and they're getting into the industry, whether that's through an internship or a graduate assistantship or their first time role. They're not going to know anything different than NIL and the age that we're entering into today.
Yeah. How do you keep from being reactive in this constant changing landscape and instead of being proactive, which is what Texas wants to do, right? What starts here changes the world. Right. How do you start, because there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, when the ball and the everything's moving the whole time.
Yeah,
it is. I think, making peace with that, the ball is moving the entire time, is to not panic.
Right. Yeah.
I think reaction comes out of panic. And I feel like that the way that CDC leads, the way that former President Hartzell, current interim President Jim Davis, Kevin Eltife, the chairman of the Board of Regents, I think that the way that they lead with transparency, full transparency here, I just came from our head coaches lunch. We do a head coaches lunch once a month. It's typically the first Wednesday of every month. I know it's a Tuesday today, but it's typically the first Wednesday of every month, where we really lay out for the head coaches in the room of what's going on, even if it's not baked. And nothing has been baked for the last 2 years. I mean, this whole NIL evolution has not been baked. We've just been going off the Wild West, as it were. And so I think that's the key to all of it, is just having leadership and having transparency and being able to say, hey, we don't know where this is going to go, but let's think about where it can go. How can we be on the forefront of that? If these certain things happen, are we ready? If these certain things happen, are we ready? It's the same conversations that we had around transitioning from the Big 12 conference to the Southeastern Conference. We had a good 2-year runway on that, I think, from the time that it was announced to the time that we actually moved. And the very first thing that we did was, Chris tasked Sean Eichhorst, our deputy athletic director, to put together task forces of the athletics department to really look at every aspect of what we do, whether it's marketing, whether it's academics, whether it's medical, whether it's, how we're organizing the equipment room, every single facet of athletics. Let's create task forces across all of athletics and invite everybody in athletics to participate. Some can, some can't. I get that. Some are interested and some aren't. I get that. But it's with the transparency of, let's take a look at who we are first. And then let's take a look at who the other 15 members of this conference that we're going to are. And then let's figure out where we benchmark. Where do we need to get better? How do we measure up in terms of all of these different areas? And I think that does create this sense of ownership, this sense of transparency, and this sense of the idea that, this is something that we're going to create together. It's not just, here's what you're going to do now. Here's your job, and your job. No, it's, where are we going? What does this look like? And how do we all participate in the solution?
That's awesome. I want to add on a little bit to that as well. You talked about, not necessarily having the reactive panic type of mindset. So much is changing, like we mentioned, and the revenue sharing model that's being proposed in the House right now, still waiting on what that verdict is going to be. When will it get signed? But how much time has that kept, I guess, you all's office and the office as a whole? You mentioned the task force.
Sure.
How much time has that taken away preparing for it, if that does come to fruition? You all are already ready for that, but then having to share that workload with where you're at currently and how you get prepared for the transition whenever that does happen.
Right. I think that's a really good question. I would reframe it a little bit. I don't know that it's taken away anything necessarily. I mean, this is the only thing inevitable is change, right? So this is part of that evolution. And so it's not taking away, I don't think, from anything that we would normally be doing. This is one of the main topics of the absolute shift in college sports. So we've dedicated, there's a group of folks, like I mentioned, task force, right? So there's a group of folks that gets together on a weekly basis to really keep abreast of what is happening in this space. What do we think the NCAA is going to do? What do we think this new Deloitte, outside fair market value meter is going to look like? So we continue to talk about these things, and we continue to talk about not just what do we think is going to happen? How do we want to shape it? How are we going to operate as the University of Texas? But how are we going to educate our coaches? How are we going to educate the greater constituency when a coach sits down with a recruit and their family? How are they going to explain this in the most straightforward terms as possible as to how this is going to look? Because the way that we understand it today, and the court settlement, that settlement hasn't been certified yet. I mean, it could happen any day. We certainly think it's going to happen before this July 1 period. But as it stood today, the way it's written is universities will be allowed, to compensate up to $20.5 million annually in exchange for the publicity rights for these student athletes, right? And so we kind of take an approach where, the other thing that not a lot of people are talking about right now either is the lifting of scholarship limitations across the board. And so whether that's a baseball that has, I believe it's 11.3 scholarships, 11.3 or 7 scholarships across the board for a 40-man roster. Well, that, according to this settlement, if it gets certified, that rule is going to go away. And so suddenly you can fund full scholarships all the way up to your roster limit. And so talking about how does that look? How are we going to explain that for certain things in exchange for your scholarship, it's like the old days, when Chris tells the story all the time. I wasn't a student athlete in college. He was, when I signed my scholarship paper, he's way more athletic than I am.
So he says,
throw that in there.
Still trying to keep my job.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
way more, he's smarter, he's prettier, he's more athletic.
We're right on script.
Right. Perfect. But when he signed the scholarship papers, hey, he agreed that his picture would be on the poster, it'd be on the, all these different collaterals. So kind of looking at what does that look like in a scholarship context, and then in exchange for a portion of this $20.5 million, what do those publicity rights look like? And then the third bucket, if you will, is looking at how do we generate true NIL dollars? How does the student athlete generate true NIL dollars? It's going to pass this Deloitte fair market value test that for X dollars they're going to fulfill X amount of activation, and that meets the fair market value test. So it's a really, really complicated, obviously, new architecture in this industry, but we're trying to figure out how to make it as simple and straightforward as possible to where our coaches can understand it, our student athletes can understand it, our recruits and their families can understand it, and that we can all know the lanes that we're operating within, whether it's a scholarship, whether it's part of that publicity rights payment, or whether it's actually outside true NIL dollars.
That's awesome. Well, I think we kind of started with the hard questions. We went straight into NIL, rev share, CDC. So
no gimme putts at all.
Let's turn these lights up brighter. Let's get it sweaty in here. No, I'm kidding. But let's shift it. This should be a little easier talk. But I've had the opportunity to go see it, and Fozzy has too. Fozzy's seen a lot of game day experiences, and I'm sure Rod has too. Where I've been to Auburn, I've been to Georgia, I've been to A&M. I've seen what they do, and everybody does cool stuff on game days. But, and I say this completely unbiased, Texas's game day experience is another level. So many schools' game day experiences revolve around the game, or else the kind of off the book stuff, right?
Sure.
Everybody tailgating, et cetera. Yeah. Texas has all of those things, but plus we have this incredible Bevo Boulevard, Longhorn City Limits, all these. It's a full event outside of the event, to where I know tons of people that don't even go to the games, that come down,
they're just out
party, and then end up sitting watching a TV in somebody's tent. But how did that come about, and what was the process for kind of starting that kind of whole thing of what really feels like Austin happening right around the game?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the very first thing that we looked at when we talked about coming down to UT and really taking that on, is having the luxury of looking at it for 14 years at Texas A&M, and it's 6 years from TCU, so 20 years of looking at this from the outside, and truly watching the city of Austin grow and evolve over that 20-year period. It changed. I mean, UT and Austin, it used to be a very, very difficult place for opponents to come in and play, and over time, from the outside, it felt like it was getting easier and easier. The crowd seemed to arrive later. They seemed to leave earlier. There didn't seem to be that intensity, that passion, and really that intimidation factor of coming into DKR to play football specifically. And so we looked at how do we change that? And you mentioned it yourself. We looked at what is Austin? What is the city of Austin? What are the brand promises? What are the expectations? When you think I'm coming to Austin, what do you want to get out of a weekend at Austin? Because that's what's happening, is our fan base is coming in from Dallas or Houston or, the Panhandle or out of state. We do have a lot of local Austinites, and Austinites are very proud of what Austin is.
Yeah. Music, food, alcohol.
There you go. Music, food, alcohol. So let's start there. Right. So Bevo Boulevard, Pecan Street Festival, street festivals, outdoor activities. Can we create an environment that mimics that and deliver that on a game-by-game basis? Can we take things like the Stadium Stampede? I was a little fascinated and kind of floored to find out that the stadium walk for the football team used to drop off in front of the north end zone, walk inside, walk down a ramp onto the football field. Keep in mind, this is 3 hours before the game.
Right.
The stadium opens 2 hours before the game starts, so there's no one in the stadium, and you walk 100 yards down to an empty stadium into Moncrief and
I remember those.
Yeah.
We were a part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know that you guys. I mean, I've never asked you, so I'm going to ask you. Was that exciting? Was that like just
Not
No.
at all.
Just have my headphones on. and-
right?
And
That is
seeing
one thing
them-
that hasn't changed is the headphones.
Yeah.
They might have gotten bigger actually over time.
For real.
But that really starts the day of the idea of, can we drop off the team, and instead of walking 100 yards to an empty stadium, can we walk 100 yards in the street among the fans
that's awesome.
and give them that opportunity to reach out and high five and yell encouragements and all that stuff. Can we create an atmosphere outside the stadium that is going to encourage people getting into the stadium earlier? A, getting in the stadium, period, but then B, getting in the stadium earlier. And so Bebo Boulevard is kind of that first iteration of the street outdoor festival activity. We did have food trucks on the street at the time. We had bars up and down the street at the time. And then Longhorn City Limits. That's another no-brainer with what Charles Littell and C3 Presents and what they've developed in Austin City Limits here. It's the live music capital of the world. Yep. How do we bring that to the 40 acres every single game and deliver a music experience for fans, for visitors, for the city of Austin, for everybody to participate in? And that was the key too, of all of this stuff needs to be free. It needs to encourage people to come in. We can invest. We're asking our fans to invest not just their money, but their time. And that's the most valuable thing they've got, is their time. How can we invest in them and deliver these experiences to them? So that was year one. Fun thing happened along the way. We got to go to our first Red River rivalry, All-State Red River rivalry.
Let's go.
I like that he got the All-State.
Right,
He knows what
you
he's
got
doing.
to throw that in
Smart
there.
man.
As the guy in marketing.
We're in good hands.
Yep.
But the All-State Red River rivalry, we got to go visit our first one as part of the University of Texas, and we're just blown away. We'd not been really to the state. I mean, I'd been to the state fair, but not during Red River and not for, all the festivities that the team goes through. And we thought, man, this is amazing. And we did the math and said, out of, I'd call it 90, 96, 97, 98,000, whatever it is that Cotton Bowl holds, we get half those tickets. So less than 50,000 tickets. Last I checked, DKR holds 101,000 people.
Yeah.
Half our fans don't get to come and do this. How do we bring that? I mean, that's the fabric of Texas football. Is that rivalry game? I mean, it's unlike anything. I tell all of my friends, folks that aren't even associated with Texas or OU, you have to go to that game.
Oh,
it's the most unique football
Bucket
game
list.
in the country. It's bucket list.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
Right.
So how do we bring that home to our fans? So Smokies Midway was born. Can we bring the State Fair of Texas, even though it's not an Austin brand promise necessarily, it is part of the fabric of Texas football, and not all our fans can experience it. So how do we bring that on a game day to Austin? So Smokies Midway was born. The following year, the food trucks and beer halls, we create Big Bertha, which is a playoff, Big Bertha and a tap truck, and our friends at Sodexo in 1883.
Well done.
A lot of creativity there, and drilling 14 holes down two sides of a refrigerated beer truck for a mobile tap experience, and these awesome local craft beers. How can we bring that in and make a food truck park? And so Hook'em Hangout is born with a dozen food trucks and a beer hall and TVs and tents. That's really kind of the sports bar vibe that we're going for out there. COVID hits during some of this. We had to take a year off and take a deep breath and say, what are we missing? And the one thing that we really thought that we were missing, which had really ballooned and grown up quite a bit over the last 7 years, as we create this energy around being a Longhorn and really tapping into the fan base. It's all this. It's the gear that we're wearing, even when it's blue on white.
Right.
Even when it's blue on white.
Everybody knows
We in the
about
summer,
it.
Dude, I love that. I love that shirt, too.
Summertime, baby.
It is summertime. It's gonna be 104
beach
today. How about
volleyball
that?
stuff there? What's going on?
There we go.
I
Just
found
beach
it.
vibe.
Now where?
Beach vibe. I don't know. I'm
Support
feeling it.
beach. I love that. Our conference champion beach volleyball.
Yeah.
There it is.
Another
How
one.
about that? Stein coming in, just
Yeah.
coming in hot. So I thought one of the things we were missing was that South Congress meets Domain, that shopping experience. We're not in a Stark Vegas. We're not in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We don't have a T-shirt shop on every corner. We have the Co-op, which does an amazing job with us, and we have Fanatics in our stores on campus in the football stadium. But there's just not a lot of that opportunity So how do we work with our licensees? How do we work with our real trademark product vendors and bring them on campus where we know we're going to have 100, 110, 120,000 people on campus on a game day and deliver the best of product, do product launches. We launched Aviator Nation last year. So we developed Big Bertha's Bazaar, playing off the bass drum, and out in front of Moody Center and the Deltec Plaza out there, that, that's the place to come and shop the latest, greatest, the newest. I think we dropped Poncho out there this year. We dropped Aviator Nation. We dropped Cricket. We dropped some Miz and Main product.
Yeah,
some of these
Last
big
Stand
labels.
was out there too.
Last Stand Hats out there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so how do we deliver that shopping experience? So I think we get it covered with food trucks, craft beer, live music, street festivals, State Fair of Texas vibes from the Red River game, and then that shopping experience, that unique South Congress meets Domain shopping experience. I think that we've really, and our staff, and Chuck Branch leads this whole area. He's the ringmaster out of this giant circus outside. I think that we've really come through and developed a unique, brand-centric Austin atmosphere around a football game day. So if you want to come visit Austin, just come to a Texas football game. You're going to get it all right there.
Yeah, it seems like that emphasis is to get the brand identity with Austin and the Longhorns, and that connection with the fans.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you guys do a great job of, by the way. I haven't had an experience like this where the fans are prioritized this much. Yeah. And I'll give you guys a ton of. We just went to the Texas Rowing Invitational, and it was, and Pivo was out there.
It was awesome.
It was amazing.
Smokey's out there.
It was an
all
event.
around.
Big inflatable Pivo guys there. What's his name?
That's Airhorn. So we had Bevo, the live mascot, Hookem, the foam guy, Airhorn, the inflatable
Airhorn. So it's good to know.
Like
write that down.
Now we know forever.
Yeah, no, we don't.
Well, Drew, do you guys, like, one of the things I've wondered is, Austin's grown so much. I've been here my whole life, and these guys have been here forever too. And we've seen the city change a lot, right? To where it was pretty much, if you lived in Austin, you were a Longhorn fan, right? And now we've had the like immense growth over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, it's been growing forever, but now you have people, and I've seen it all over the place, people coming to the games who aren't Longhorn fans, right? It's an experience. It's a thing. So do you guys have initiatives to say, hey, how do we make random person who may have grown up in New York or LA or wherever, how do we help make them a Longhorn fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all just goes back to that emphasis on the game day experience and the fan experience, that there is room for everyone. All of these things, and we do that. It's mirroring those Austin brand promises with our own traditions as well, because you hear a lot of things coming in from the outside of we don't put enough emphasis here, or we don't do that, or we don't do this. And so it's how do we make our traditions, how do we educate fan bases on that may not be as familiar with who we are? I mean, we even educated today on Airhorn.
There it is. No, but you guys do. You have the lyrics on the TV.
Bevo Boulevard. Bevo comes walking down the boulevard. I mean, how often do you get to see a 2,000-pound steer walk down the street, right?
True.
Yeah. Smokey's Midway. We've got Smokey out there for photographs. Hookem's hangout. Hookem hangs out there for sure. Big Bertha is actually at Big Bertha's Bazaar at the start of the Bazaar before she has to come in for the stadium. So how do we invite fans in and say this? And this, by the way, is all free, right? I mean, you got to pay for the food and beverage and all that, but the games are all free. The music is free. All this experience is free. It's family centric. It's fan centric, and it's educating. It's taking fans that, sure, you might have gone to Cal and you've moved to Austin with your family and lived here. Well, come on to game day. And by the way, we don't play Cal. Cal's not in our league. You can be a Longhorn. You can get this incredible experience. You can be a Longhorn without having any consternation or conflict. And so it's providing and delivering those experiences that are accessible and teaching people what being a Longhorn is about. It's always fun for me to see, and again, going back to the gear piece, friends or folks that have become friends or folks that have been introduced in this marketplace that come and take us up on the offer to just come out for game day and take a look at it, and they buy a Texas shirt, or they buy a Texas hat, or they buy something and say, you know what, I'm gonna support the Horns. I didn't think I'd be a Longhorn, but I'm convinced. I want to root for this team. So it's all about the experience and all about welcoming people onto your campus. I mean, we could have easily charged for all this stuff and fenced it off and made it another admission, another squeezing a little bit more revenue out. But the truth of it is, if we do this right, if we create this fan base, if we create this passion towards a brand, the revenue comes on the back end.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most beautiful part about it is we want you to be a Longhorn. We want you to wear the burnt orange and white. We want you as part of the Longhorn family. And if they feel that connectivity, that is just going to deepen and grow over time.
If you build it, they will come.
If you build it, I've heard that. I've heard that somewhere.
Absolutely. Drew, I got one more, and I know you're pressed for time, but obviously what you all have built has been incredible, nothing short of. I don't know if you ever get a chance to kind of sit back and take a deep breath, but like year one in the SEC has been an absolute success, right? You talked about some of the conference championships, starting off with women's soccer, who we had on with Coach Kelly, going all the way through swimming and diving, right? Beach volleyball, the diamond sports having their opportunity now, women getting the number 6 seed, the men have an opportunity to go do what they do. But you're still preparing for something else, but like, have you had a chance to be like, hey, we're pretty good. We did the dang thing.
Yeah, for real.
Together, son, and wrote it out very well.
The task force worked pretty good.
Right.
Task force.
Check. Del Conte 101. You don't rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
There's always something we can do better. There's always it's always a constant conversation. And even we go when we do get free time and spare time. I'll go to an event. I'll go to all kinds, and it's not always a sporting event either. I mean, I mentioned Charles before, and Austin City Limits Music Festival. I mean, Charles has become a very close friend. I'm fascinated to go and watch how ACL entertains the different areas, the different vibes, just the different ways they appeal to a broad music audience. How can we learn from that? We were up in Atlanta for some licensing meetings this past week and had a chance to go. I didn't get to, I had to leave early, but some of my staff had a chance to go to the Braves game. And they're sending me pictures back of some of the areas that the Braves have, some of the concessions items that the Braves have, some of those things that we're borrowing from all these areas. So it always feels good to hear the comment. I don't take compliments very well, but it always feels good to hear that. Where I get a satisfaction is walking around on a game day, and whether it's a baseball game in the Yeti Yard or at Bevo Boulevard or around the Moody Center, and seeing the interaction between friends, between family, a father and their young child up on the shoulders and, getting the face painted and all that stuff, just being able to really feel and getting satisfaction of knowing that sense of community, that sense of belonging, that sense of fandom is resonating with these people. I mean, that's the biggest kind of step back and take a deep breath and be satisfied in that. I think that's the biggest reward that we get out of this. But we're always evolving. I mean, there's always going to be something we can do better, be better, whether it's drone shows and adding those in, whether it's laser lights, whether it's, how do we work with live music artists at the games? How do we keep raising the bar in the industry? And again, the fans are at the center of it. Are our fans going to enjoy this? Is this something they're going to want? We're not afraid to try things. If something flops, it flops, and we check the box and we move on, or we figure out why did it flop? Could we have done it differently to make it successful? I think these are all things that we strive for to get better with the fan at the heart of all of it.
I did. I forgot we had 2 of your other constituents on the show. They were supposed to mention the Fozzy word in the drone show.
Yes.
Wanted to make sure that was
Fozzy's worked NIL into episodes.
The evolution has been
He
considered.
likes to market himself.
There needs to be some sort of task force on the Fozzy drone situation. Let's
the
make
face
sure.
of Texas athletics, everyone. Fozzy Whittaker.
Well, they didn't take.
honestly.
So we get to see the 3D rendering before it goes up, and for whatever reason, this bear came on the screen, and we're like, no, wrong Fozzy, wrong Fozzy. We were on the track. We were on track. The artist just didn't understand the assignment.
Yeah. Maybe it might take another year or 2, but we'll get back. But Drew, I witnessed it at one of the baseball games, and I think the hospitality, the details are so important, right? That's what makes the big difference. And I think you guys pay such close attention to detail. I watched you and Luke Dunn have a conversation about lighting up a certain piece of the scoreboard for like strikes and balls and like the in-depth conversations. I think that's what separates you guys, but also, and I think you guys show your knowledge, you and CDC as well as others, through being so accessible and transparent on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Where does that come from, that transparency as well as that attention to detail?
Details matter. It is absolutely, the devil is truly in the details. And so if we're not going to go all the way, if we're not going to do it 100%, then why are we doing it? I mean, it's either worth doing right or let's do something else. I mean, there's no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of things. There is a shortage of time. So if we're going to focus on something, then let's get it all the way right down to the minute details. That matters. And that matters to fans. I mean, that is part of fandom. Whether it's the slightly different shade of orange that happens occasionally, the details really, really matter. In all,
do fans care about the color of the orange?
Just a little bit.
Okay, cool. I've never seen that anywhere. So
the orange smoke,
no big deal.
People were like,
I'll do it. I'll get a shirt and be like, what is this color?
and that is a fascinating thing between this fan base and maybe the school that we were at before at TCU, where from lavender to deep dark eggplant purple is purple.
Purple.
That is not the case.
No.
that is. 180-degree opposite.
There's one hex color and it needs to be that.
One color. So we get that, but those details matter, and I think that the engagement with the fan base and being open to that and being able to say, hey, we screwed up, we got this wrong, we made a mistake, let me make it right. We're not going to be perfect all the time. We try to be perfect. We expect ourselves to be perfect. The reality is that doesn't exist. So when we do make mistakes, don't run from them, don't hide from them, acknowledge it. We talk a lot with our gatemen, our ushers, our concessionaires that hey, look, you're empowered. If you see somebody walk away from a concession stand and they've got an ice cream cone and they trip and they drop the ice cream cone, or they spill their soda, or they drop their hot dog or whatever, go make sure they get a replacement on that. That $3, $4, $5. What are we talking about?
Yeah,
right.
But that little act of kindness, that little act of again, it goes back to this is our home. These are your guests. If you notice something that happens, correct it. And so when we hear things like I had a bad experience, or I had, was treated this way or that way, or, somebody wasn't very nice to me, or there was a person in the stands that, I didn't appreciate, we're going to go and make an effort to make that right. And social media is the quickest and most connected way to do that. And I think, again, back to the transparency piece of it, it is transparent. It's out there for the world to see when we do have interaction with our fan base. And, if we can make your experience just incrementally better, I think that's the most important piece of it. I will admit that way back when we had the first conversation at TCU about Chris getting on Twitter, I thought that might be the worst idea I've ever heard in my life.
There was one vote for no in that meeting.
There was one vote for you.
Please God, no.
Please God, no. Oh boy, here we go. But that's the beauty of it. And again, the authenticity, the human aspect of it. It comes through. What you see is what you get.
Well,
I think it is one of the most unique things about how we operate is that openness.
I was going to ask you about the secret sauce, but I think you just kind of nailed what the secret sauce is for the success of the athletic department. I'll just ask you this before we let you go. You were an Aggie at one point. By the way, I was almost an Aggie too. So
we've all made a wrong turn on the road somewhere.
I don't hate on the Aggies at all.
I thought I was going to get out of here unscathed.
No.
Do you hear how quiet it got for that part of the talk? Everybody's like, ha ha.
Hey, listen, I don't hate on the Aggies like most Longhorns because I was almost an Aggie. My final two schools, Longhorns and the Aggies. So I don't hate on them like that. But can you compare and contrast, building those two brands, marketing, promoting those two brands, kind of the similarities and differences between the two. That's all I'll set you up for. That's pretty easy. I could have phrased it.
I don't know about that being an easy one.
I thought we front-loaded this with the hard questions.
Right.
I'll say this, the stops that I've had, and I am, just to be clear, I am a bulldog by degree.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. All right. Very
I'm
true.
a bulldog
Very true.
by a degree. And father went to school there. I'm deep in the Mississippi State family. But whether it was at Mississippi State, whether it was the Big 12, whether it was Texas A&M, TCU, or Texas, everywhere, it's finding that identity. It's finding, what is at the heart of I almost said the core of your identity, but not setting you up for that. But what is really the identity of the university, of the fan base, of the town, of the culture, of all of it? And so really tapping into, I mean, I think that's a similarity, is figuring out, who that identity is, and then emphasizing and elevating that identity, embracing it. Not running from who you are, but embracing who you are and really bringing that all the way out. There's certainly differences between the two schools. The city of Austin is different than Bryan College Station.
That's such a good political answer. I love it.
Both served me well at the times of life
exactly.
that I was in. But I mean, passionate fan bases. I think the one thing that is interesting in all three stops is just the way that tradition in college sport is held so near and dear, right? And whether that's a tradition of a military style marching band, whether that's a tradition of this giant purple freight train horn thing, or whether that's a tradition of a 2,000-pound live steer. I mean, these are things that really resonate. And the more, I firmly believe that the more that fans, and particularly younger fans in the formative upbringing years and deciding truly where you're going to go to college, what your career path is, that if athletics and tradition is something near and dear to you, that those things ought to be elevated and accessible to the public. It's why we put Bevo out on Bevo Boulevard and Smokey out on the Midway and Bertha out. These are everybody's traditions. I like to say all the time, it's back to when we built the Hall of Fame and put all the trophies out in the Hall of Fame. And you notice in that area, there's no glass between you and the trophies, except for those really, really expensive Waterford crystal footballs. In the back. Those are that thing comes off and you can break it. But the rest of them, we are fortunate to be stewards of this brand, of these traditions for a very short period of the overall time. Texas is going to be here a lot longer than I will, and it's been here a lot earlier than I was. So we get this brief moment to really be good caretakers and good stewards of these traditions, of this brand. And so how do we share that with the people that it means the most to? How do we become accessible? How do we create that ownership from our fan base? Because they pour their heart and soul, and in a lot of cases when it comes to tickets and merchandise, their hard-earned money into this place, and it's because of how it feels in here. And the more that we can connect with that by sharing our traditions, by opening up our excellence, whether it's the Rose Bowl trophy that's sitting in it, you can actually, how many places can you go and touch that actual Rose Bowl trophy or that Heisman trophy? Those are really, really special things. Well, they're ours, but they're not ours. They're all of ours. So inviting those folks in, I think at the end of the day, that's what really speaks to me and motivates me in the college sports space, is that fandom. And every school truly has it. Are they willing to go ahead and embrace it and put that on a pedestal and really make sure that it's available for all their fans, past, current, and future?
That's awesome. All right, guys. You guys got any more before we let them get out of here?
We got more, but
Show,
part two.
Yeah.
It's a part two.
Fozzy's back on the Fozzy drone
Part
show.
two. I'll get with our drone folks immediately.
Yeah,
My dog.
man. If this ever happens, oh man,
I'm gonna be so mad.
he's not even gonna fit on the show anymore. But his head's gonna be so damn big. But
I'm gonna be so appreciative. In the same way he gave his flowers to CDC, that's the same way I'm gonna give
There
my
we
flowers.
go.
Oh, there you
I
go.
just appreciate how hard you work, man. That's all. Well, Drew, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was awesome. I think it was very informative. I think people are gonna dig hearing about all this. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate you guys.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
Welcome.